Hey, welcome into the program, everybody. This is Breaking the Huddle. I'm your host, Joel Klatt. This show is brought to you by Dr. Pepper. It is the one fans deserve. What a wild weekend of college football it was last weekend. Some amazing games. Obviously, the game. Michigan beats Ohio State for the third straight year. The Iron Bowl was epic. You had some great matchups in rivalry games, including the Apple Cup, Washington and Washington State, in a game that the Huskies won right at the end. So it got me thinking a little bit. I thought to myself, you know what? We should go back and look at the most important and impactful plays from the weekend. And I've got 4 of them, and they're from the games that I just mentioned. So let's go out to the game that I was calling, and I want to tell you and show you what happened in the game film on 2 of the most important plays in the Michigan-Ohio State game. This is going to be Will Johnson's interception early in the game. It's going to set up Michigan for a touchdown inside the 10-yard line. So here's Will Johnson. He's locked on Marvin Harrison. Look at the inside leverage he plays with. So Harrison's trying to run this inside breaking route, but because there's a safety over the top, Will Johnson can squat on this route and even play heavy inside, in particular because Harrison is telegraphing his route a little bit, and now all he's got to do is beat him to the spot. Now, I would expect a little bit more fight from Marvin Harrison Jr. right there because Will Johnson beats him to the spot and he intercepts the ball. That is a massive play, a turnover. Then he gets the ball down inside the 10-yard line, deep red area. Michigan's able to score. That is a massive play and a great job by Will Johnson. And what they would have seen on film is that Will Johnson has 6 interceptions in his career. 4 of them are inside breaking routes. He's really good at that. And so Kyle McCord, when he comes off of that fake, he's got to know who he's targeting. It's not just that he's throwing to Marvin Harrison Jr. He's got to know that he's trying to complete an in-breaking route against a guy who likes to squat in Will Johnson. And they did not recognize that. Johnson beat him to the spot. He had help over the top, knew he could just sit there and play heavy inside leverage. And because of that, Michigan got the interception and then eventually a touchdown. Now let's go to a touchdown that they got on the offensive side. And this was a critical play. J.J. McCarthy to Roman Wilson over the middle. Now, Ohio State's in man coverage, but what they do with the second safety, Malik Hartford, is that they drop him into a robber technique. So his eyes are going to be all over McCartney. Here comes Roman Wilson in motion, and he's going to have this little over route, kind of a seam route to the opposite side. Now, McCarthy looks to his right, doesn't like it, so now he comes back to Roman Wilson. When he decides to throw the ball, Hartford's eyes are actually still on him, but right when he releases, Hartford moves his eyes to Roman Wilson, and that's the reason that the ball is able to creep through this tight window. Look at that tight window. If Hartford's eyes stay on McCarthy, for another beat, he picks that ball off, but it didn't. And the ball is a laser beam right between the 2 defenders. It's a beautiful throw. It's a catch. Roman Wilson takes it into the end zone, got control, takes it into the end zone. It's confirmed in review, and Michigan scores. But you see just the small nuances. Games are won and lost because of these inches, these little details. Will Johnson sits on an inside breaking route. Hartford's eyes just move ever so slightly the beat before the ball leaves the quarterback's hands. And one plays a touchdown for Michigan, and the other one is an interception for Michigan. It's wild how these plays tend to go like that. Beautiful throw there from McCarthy. And I tell you, it takes a lot of guts to make that throw. He claimed in an interview that he saw Hartford's eyes move before he released the ball. And if he did, man, more power to him, because as you can tell by the video evidence, that was close. All right, let's go to the Apple Cup now, Washington and Washington State. So it's 4th down. Kalen DeBoer's season is on the line. It's 21-21. If they don't get it, Washington State's in field goal range. What do? Watch this. This little ride play. It's a read off of the defensive end, but I love what Penix is doing. See how he takes the fake all the way down, and then he's going to bring Rome Odunze back on this little flip on the other side. The reason I wanted to show you that play is just because of that fake from Penix. That fake and riding the running back all the way down, those little details, that's what gets the opening, and then that's why he's so excited. Odunze is able to get the 4th down. They would go down, they would kick the field goal, and they would win the game. Again, Football is about details and execution. It's the little things. It's not just that you call the play, it's that you have to execute the play, defensively or offensively. So if I'm Michael Penix and now you're the defensive end and I'm staring right at you, I got to ride that guy all the way down and get you to commit to me, and then I can flip it back to Odunze, and he's able to get the first down. Last one before we get out of here about last week, and we cannot leave without showing you this play from Alabama and Auburn. First of all, Auburn's going to try to play man across the board and then 3 players deep in kind of a 3 free safety, man across the board. Look, that leaves 3 guys to rush, but here's the problem. They decide to QB spy. For what reason? I have no idea. The ball is at the 31-yard line. You would want nothing else than Jalen Milroe to run because you've got all your defenders back there ready to come tackle him. So there's your 3 free players deep. Here's your man players. There was some confusion. Isaiah Bond is running kind of free. And again, there's 5 seconds where he can throw the ball because they only rushed 2 guys. There's no reason to have a spy. Chase him out of here. But they didn't. And then all of a sudden, the coverage gets screwed up, and the free player who doesn't have a man doesn't read the quarterback of the eyes, doesn't read the eyes of the quarterback, and so he's nowhere to be found, and now it's a one-on-one situation. The ball is perfectly thrown. Perfectly thrown. It's not over Bond's head, and it's not too short where the defender can knock it down. That's a tight window throw from way deep far hash. Beautiful throw from Milroe, and just horrendous defense from Auburn. You did everything wrong. The free safeties didn't read the eyes of the quarterback. They spied when they shouldn't have. They didn't know who they had in man on the underneath players. They didn't get the quarterback outside of the pocket, which would have effectively minimized the area which they needed to cover the rest of those players. Boy, that was a wild scene on Saturday. Those were some of the best plays that we had on Saturday from some of those great games. All right, when we come back, we got to talk about the College Football Playoff Committee, what they gave to us, what do the rankings look like, what do the scenarios look like moving forward. That's coming up. All right, welcome back, everybody. Okay, so that's how the games played out last week, and we got to look at what the College Football Playoff Committee gave us this week in terms of their rankings. So this is the top 6. After Ohio State lost to Michigan, they fell all the way to 6, which I thought was interesting. I thought that they could have been a little bit higher than that. Ohio State, Texas, which is actually below this, all with better resumes than Oregon. I don't think anybody would actually say Florida State is one of the 4 best teams in the country right now with the Jordan Travis injury. So there's a lot of inconsistencies right now with the College Football Playoff Committee just in their top 6. Washington stays in there at 3, and obviously Georgia and Michigan at 1 and 2. I wanted to take a look at the top 25, though, because I think that's where it actually gets a little bit more interesting. So when you take a look after the top 6, you'll see that Texas and Bama are there, and then Missouri and Penn State, that rounds out your top 10. But then let's kind of gaze over here towards the end of the top 25, and here's what you'll see. Tennessee at 21 and Clemson at 23. Now, you might be thinking to yourself like, yeah, that's probably fine, and you know what? Fair enough. What you don't see is a team like Utah, which has a similar record to those teams and probably has a better resume than both Tennessee or Clemson. In fact, if you looked at this committee's top 25, and you put it up against what a simulated BCS standing would give you, here's what you'll find, is that there are 2 teams that are severely overrated by the committee as it relates to what they would be in the BCS. And that is Clemson, that's a +6, and Tennessee +4 in terms of spots ahead of where the BCS would have them. And remember, the BCS has a lot more inputs into that equation. In fact, you could say that there aren't anomalies. There are not outliers in a BCS equation, but now there are outliers. Well, why does that matter? It matters because of the scenarios that could play out this weekend and how the committee will have to rank teams come Saturday night. Let's play out 2 of those scenarios. Let's just say that every conference championship game goes chalk and the favorite wins. Okay, so scenario 1 is that the favorites all win. This would be my top 4 if the favorites all win. Georgia would beat Alabama. Michigan would beat Iowa. Oregon would beat Washington. Texas would beat Oklahoma State. And Florida State would beat Louisville. Now, in that scenario, I think that the best 4 teams in the country would be these 4 teams. In fact, I think that this is the best 4 teams that we could possibly get into a playoff. Georgia, Michigan, Oregon, and Texas. Now, do I think that's what the committee would do? Probably not, but this is what I would do. This is really best case scenario for college football fans, at least in my estimation. All of these teams would be champions. This would be the 4 best teams in the country. Let's move to another scenario, and then this is where it really gets dicey as it relates to that top 25, and let me show you why. The next scenario would be if all the favorites plus Bama win. So chalk happens, so you got Oregon win, Texas win, Michigan win, Florida State win, but Bama beats Georgia. What happens then? It's kind of chaos for the College Football Playoff Committee. They've got to figure out what they're going to do. The one team that we know would be in would be Michigan. After that, I'm not sure, to be quite honest with you. Here's what I do know, though, is that if Alabama were to stop a 29-game winning streak and beat the 2-time defending national champions and win the SEC as a team that went undefeated through the SEC season, remember, their one loss was in the non-conference to Texas, Alabama would be in. Folks, the SEC champ would not be left out by the College Football Playoff Committee. That's crazy. But as soon as you include Alabama, which I think that they would, guess who you have to include as well? The team that beat them. So Texas, in that case, I think would go and probably get the number 2 seed because remember, they would have a win at the SEC champ home stadium in Tuscaloosa. The last spot is where it would get interesting. It would be Oregon, Georgia, and Florida State. And in this scenario, I think Oregon would probably get the benefit of the doubt, but I'm not totally sure. And the reason is I want to go back to the top 25. In that case, you would have Oregon, Georgia, and Florida State, and yet the resumes would be made up with teams like Tennessee and Clemson and not Utah. So this is why the rankings in the back end really matter. If we get a scenario where there's one more spot left in the college football playoff, and you've got Georgia as a non-champ, Florida State as a champ, and Oregon as a champ, it's going to matter where Tennessee is ranked and where Clemson is ranked and where Utah is or is not ranked. That's why we need more variables. That's why we need to fix the committee. That's why you can't have outlier rankings determining exactly who gets in to the top 4. I'll keep saying that until we change, but you know what? Doesn't seem like we're changing anytime soon. Some fun scenarios coming down the pike, there's no doubt. I'll be in Indianapolis. I can't wait for this game. Michigan, Iowa. Iowa's defense, very, very good. Why? I'm going to show you when we come back, and I'm going to show you why it's going to be very difficult for Michigan and J.J. McCarthy. All right, welcome back to the program. Big Ten Championship game coming up on Saturday on Fox. Gus, Ginny, and I will be live in Indianapolis for Michigan and Iowa. And if you look at the tail of the tape, you know, yeah, is it a one-sided game? You could say that, although the scoring offense for Iowa is not great. Their defense is spectacular. Their defense is as good as any in the country, and in large respect, it is the reason why they're in this game. So we've got to take a look at what makes them so effective on the defensive side. I've got 4 plays, and they're all in ways that they can create turnovers, and they're all in ways that I think they're going to have to play great against Michigan. If they don't create turnovers against Michigan, if they don't pick some throws off from J.J. McCarthy, then it's going to be tough for them to win in this game. Let's take a look at some of these plays here, and let me show you what Iowa's defense does so well. So first and foremost, you've got to understand that they are a zone-based team, and what that zone allows them to do is play with their eyes on the quarterback. So here they're going to be in a 3-deep zone. There's going to have 4 underneath defenders. But what I want you to see is how many guys have their eyes on the quarterback. Everybody's eyes on the quarterback. That allows them to feel the route structure and then break on the throw exactly when the throw happens. They are not an undisciplined team. They are incredibly disciplined with their eyes. So then they feel the route, boom, they see it, and then they break on it. So what does it do to a quarterback? Well, it forces a quarterback into making tight window specific throws. Okay, you've got to be really accurate, and you've got to be really on time. And if you're not, tips, overthrows. If you're not on time, guess what? it's going to get picked off. It's not just that it's incomplete, it's going to get picked off. Let's take a look at another play and another example of exactly what I'm talking about. Now, this time, here's what Iowa's going to do. They're going to bring a blitz, but still play zone behind it. So they maintain their identity with a pressure, and they're just going to drop this defensive end out off that left side. What does that allow everyone to do? Play zone. What does zone allow you to do? Have eyes on the quarterback. So they're feeling the route structure. They drop towards a route, and then they put their eyes on the quarterback. It allows them to know where they're covering and then break on the football. And watch right here. Quarterback is just a little bit late, throws it after the wide receiver is out of his break. What happens? Boom, picked off. This is what Iowa does. If it's not on time, if it's an overthrow, if it's tipped, it's going to get picked off. Let's continue here and show you more examples. Here's another one. Another 3-deep zone. They're going to bring a Mike backer pressure, the middle backer, and they're going to drop a safety right there. So they're pressuring and yet maintaining their structure, their philosophy of zone coverage. What happens in zone coverage? I can have eyes on the quarterback. So they're feeling the routes, and yet everybody's eyes are back there. And then watch this. This ball is late and behind the wide receiver. So guess what happens? He's trying to throw the little out route to the number 2 wide receiver, and the corner, because his eyes are plastered all over the quarterback, what does he do? He just comes up, it's late, it's behind him, and what's going to happen? Oh, guess what? It's a pick. That's right, because that's what Iowa does. This is the pressure that they put on you. Again, it's not always just immense athletic ability or pass rush or some diabolical scheme. Sometimes it's just the efficiency of playing with your eyes on the quarterback. It forces that guy to play on time. It forces him to throw the ball accurately. If he doesn't, then the ball is going to get picked off. One more example here from the Iowa D that I just love. And this is another one where they're going to rotate. What do they have? It's a 3-deep zone. What does that allow you to do? Put eyes on the quarterback. So as the quarterback comes back, he's got all 3 of these defenders eyes on the quarterback. He's trying to float this ball into an over route, but because this safety is not just screaming down, he's got eyes on the ball. Guess what? He can adjust. It's an overthrow. Boom, it's picked off. This defense constantly puts their offense in positions to succeed. Is the offense very good for Iowa? No, they're not very good for Iowa. They're the worst total offense in the country by a pretty wide margin. But their defense does a great job of providing some offense for them, not only through defensive scores, but providing field position as well. They're going to need to play great on defense. Every mistake that J.J. McCarthy makes needs to wind up in the hands of the Iowa Hawkeyes. That's why, from a Michigan standpoint, if you're going to throw the ball, what you have to be able to do is throw the ball on time, making great decisions. That ball has got to be on time and on target, because if it's not, this is one of those rare defenses that will make you pay with a turnover. It's not just an incompletion, but it's a turnover. When we come back here, let's finish things off today with a little questions from Fansville as we head into a conference championship game week of college football. All right, welcome back. Let's go out and get some questions from Fansville. We'll take a look and see what we can do as far as answering your questions. Okay, so here we go. We got a few chosen here. This one comes in from Cody. He says, can things line up and Ohio State still make the CFP? Maybe strength of schedule and a 1 loss. That would be interesting. I do think that there is a narrow path for Ohio State. It involves a bit of chaos. Let's go back to the top 25, and I'll kind of like start knocking off some scenarios. So the first thing that I think Ohio State would need to happen is that the top 3 teams that are there now, I think, need to win. So Georgia, Michigan, and Washington need to win. Okay, I believe that Louisville needs to beat Florida State, which would kind of knock them out. Oregon would have lost to Washington, which would kind of knock them out. You don't want to get into a debate with Texas, so you need Oklahoma State to beat them, and then Georgia will have beaten Alabama. And at that point, I think it's actually pretty plausible that Ohio State would slide into that 4th spot right there. So again, the scenario looks like this. Georgia beats Alabama, Michigan beats Iowa, Washington beats Oregon, Louisville beats Florida State, and Oklahoma State beats Texas. In that scenario, I do believe that the Buckeyes would be in the college football playoff for the 2nd straight year, even though they were not Big Ten champs. Good question. Good question. And I know it's a narrow path. You need some upsets there, but it is a small path. All right, what does Florida State have to prove in the ACC championship? Connor, I actually think quite a bit. It's pretty apparent to those of us that really cover the sport that currently, Florida State's not one of the 4 best teams in the country. Not with Tate Rodemaker in there at quarterback. I remember they barely got to like just under 230 total yards against a 5-7 Florida team last week, even with some of those great players on the outside like Keon Coleman. So they need to prove that they can still be a dominant team even without Jordan Travis, or else it's pretty obvious that they're not one of the 4 best. Now, if they want to go just on resume, if they want to go just on deserving it because they're undefeated and a Power 5 champ, no, that's fair and that's fine, and I'm not going to argue against that. But as far as what they need to prove to have any legitimate shot in the playoff or to prove that they really are one of the 4 best, they need to be dominant against Louisville even without Jordan Travis at quarterback. All right, let's get out here and catch one more. Jack says, do you think that eventually we will see a 16-team playoff or even more? I hope not, Jack. I actually think that would be really, really bad for the sport. Okay, so first and foremost, a 12-team playoff expands the meaning of importance in college football, which I think is important. However, a 12-team playoff also allows you to have 4 byes at the top. So you're incentivizing the best teams to play hard throughout the rest of the regular season to win a conference championship. If you don't have those byes, then you don't have that incentive for the best teams in the country who will just shut it down in the last couple of weeks. So in order to make the last games mean something, and every game means something, you not only need to incentivize teams to get into the playoffs, but you also need to incentivize the best teams to play hard in order to get that bye. And then in the future, I'm hoping that even in the second round, we go back to campus, we get off of neutral sites, and then those teams that get a bye, that are the 4 best teams, 4 best champions in the country, guess what? They would have home games. So that's why I don't want to go to 16. I want to remain at 12. You got to incentivize those teams to play hard at the top. Folks, thanks for watching. This has been Breaking the Huddle. I'm Joel Klatt. This show is brought to you by Dr. Pepper. Remember, it is the one fans deserve. Saturday night on Fox, Big Ten championship game. Gus, Jenny, and I will be there. Michigan and Iowa.